All right, let's go ahead and kick this off. So welcome. This is a Microsoft and You webinar for May 2022. I'm going to go ahead and be your host again, Ted Brown, Director of Product Management here at Ntiva. And today we're going to be talking everything Teams. So we have Teams tips and tricks to go over with you. So we're going to go through, kind of get to know your teams, just basically do a base level of everything we have on the app side of Teams. And then how do you want to organize your teams? Again, what makes sense for me, you might want to take some hints to see if it makes sense for you to help organize your day. And then how do you use Teams files? Then go into some managing notification, security, as well as other tips. And again, like other webinars I've done, we'll go ahead and use the Q&A section for any questions that you may have that comes up during this presentation. I'll go ahead and answer them all at the end. And like the other presentations that I have run, I definitely welcome any questions for any other presentations I've done in the past. So we've done Azure Virtual Desktop last time. We had Outlook tips and tricks. We have done Windows 11 as well as Microsoft NCE licensing. So anything in those realms, please feel free to ask. Any reminder or anything, happy to go into it. As well as if you guys have any ideas maybe for some future webinars that you might want to see or take a listen to, that is in the Microsoft realm, I'm happy to take some suggestions so we can go ahead and cater some of these webinars towards you, what might be beneficial for you to hear. So definitely throw this into the chat as well. So Teams. So first off, I have to say for me, Teams has become the hub of almost everything I do on a daily basis. I live in this day in, day out. It's really slowly become probably the most used application that I have in my system all the time. So it kind of started off with Teams where it used to be Skype for business. You had the chat section, you can chat with colleagues, you do video conferencing back and forth as well. And then Teams came along and they kind of integrated the whole file sharing level in there, doing really the voice over IP calling within it as well, and put together a nice little package of an application that contained all that information so you can access to everything you need in that one centralized portal. And there really isn't a day that goes by that I don't open this up and look at it. In fact, I think most days I wake up, I do look at my phone to see what emails that come through. But when I get to my computer, the first thing I do is check with Teams. I go in there to see if any activities that come through, see if there's any chats that came through the night, and just start off my day from there. So it's really, again, becomes a central hub of everything that I get done on a daily basis. And I live with it day in and day out, especially do anything with files and folders, sharing, syncing, everything's done within Teams today. So just again, to do a little bit of base leveling is I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what Teams does and the different characteristics and the applications that are contained in the main applications of Teams. So I'm going to go back and forth between sharing my screen as well as going to its PowerPoint. So let me bring up Teams real quick. So the first one we have here is pretty basic, the Teams chat. So again, here you just have the chat feature on the left-hand side. So these are the applications that I'm talking about right now. So you have your chat feature right here, which again, this is just usually one-to-one chats, group chats. And from here as well, you do have the capability when you're in a chat with somebody to do a video call as well as just an audio call directly from it. The next piece is the calendar. And this has been a very nice feature that's heavily integrated between all the different 365 aspects. So the calendar here, click on my calendar, kind of busy today. Now, within this calendar, it's again heavily integrated. This is the same calendar you'll see when you're Outlook on your phone. So anything you add in here, remove from here, will be removed from the other calendars you're using in Office 365. I also find this is the best place to jump to different Teams meetings. So I can have a Teams meeting here that I went to, hit join. And I have a Teams meeting coming up here with a vendor coming up. I can click join from here as well, so I can access the Teams meetings I need to get to very quickly from my Teams calendar feature within the Teams application. The next piece is Teams itself. Now, like I said beforehand, you had the Skypes for business. You could do Skypes for business where you could do chatting within that. You also had your calendar within there. But when the Teams came out, they were put into the actual Teams portion within the Teams application. Now, Teams are groups of people who connect and collaborate and work together on projects. And then within Teams, there are channels. And then basically channels are separations that are created within the Teams groups for organizations. So I almost think of it as a file folder. So beforehand, most people will be working, even today, when they're working within Teams, you have your different Teams groups that you're working in. So these are all the Teams channels that I'm part of today. So I do have a handful. But within the Teams group, so this is the main group I work out of, I have different channels. And so I think of channels almost as a file file hierarchy that you would have had within a shared folder. So beforehand, before Teams, I would have created a product group, a Microsoft product management group. I might have called it, might have been a P drive or an M drive or something like that. And then in my P or M drive, it would have a list of the hierarchy folders that would be pertinent information to my group. And it'd be all organized with an alphabetical, but I would have, hey, here's my connections, here's my contract analyst docs, and kind of going down that direction. Same thing with channels. So with channels, you can separate actually and organize different functions of your department within them or different parts of your group. So definitely recommend not necessarily creating one channel. You might want to make it specific to each individual or different groups within the group itself. You can kind of separate things out and organize it properly. Next part here we have is activities. Now, activities, I personally actually don't use this too much. It's at the top. And this is basically feeds bringing in information into one centralized group. So you can take a look at here if you have different things that coming in of giving you information. You might have been mentioned personally within a Teams chat with the @ symbol, or it could have been a conversation or a post of a channel that you're following. And I'll kind of show you as well as how you can manage and handle some of the notifications within the activities and feeds so you can get the ones you want that are pertinent to you. And the last one I have in here is calls. So with Teams, it's become really a voice over IP type of solution. So you have the ability to do one-to-one calls as well as group calls within Teams itself. So if you actually purchase Microsoft Business for Voice, or now it's called Teams Phone, you can do direct dialing and get extension dialing directly to you within Teams itself. So with Ntiva here, we do have that option. So I do have my calling function within here. So if I need to call somebody after this webinar, I can call directly from my Teams application and we'll call out to that person. The great part about this, and don't have to go into the nuances of voice over IP for everyone, but it's really great because I can actually go to anywhere and still have my extension to get inbound calls and outbound calls. I don't have to work from the office or work from home because I have a direct phone here. I can put the Teams application on my phone and then get the direct dialing directly to me and make inbound, outbound calls and have it all saved within the Teams application. Next piece, organization of your teams. So if anyone joined the Outlook tips and tricks, one of the first parts in there is how to kind of organize it and make sense for you. Again, these are going to tips and tricks that work for me. Maybe you might gain some information out of it and to apply it to your daily workflow. But when something comes along with like the application Teams itself, where I'm in it heavily working day to day, I want to make sure I'm optimized to make sure that I know where files are, where the actual applications are, and I can move around quickly and get to information I need at hand because the day is busy enough. So I want to make sure everything's set and personalized to myself. The key piece here is organize your teams. Make sure it makes sense to you. Just because of the layout that's constructed at the time that you open it up doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. In Teams, it's very customizable. So within the Teams group, I went over the applications on our left-hand side. This is completely customizable. You can actually grab one calendar, bring it up. Maybe I want to bring the activities down here and I want to have the chats at the top because that would make some sense to me. Now, activities, maybe I don't need to see activities because I don't even use it. I don't want to even take in space. I can right click on it and unpin and it's gone. So it kind of cleans up the toolbar on the left-hand side for the applications that makes sense to how I want to use. And for some reason, if I want to add activities back, I can click on those three dots, type in activities and pin it back because maybe someone showed me a neat little trick that worked for them. I want to put it back in here and bring it right to the top so I have it available to me. The other thing you can do within Teams, you saw when I went to those three little dots, is you can add applications to your team center. So you might see one for me right here that I use. It's called Clip Trading. This is the training as a service tool for Microsoft applications. I'll show a little bit more of that. I did kind of go into it a little bit last time during our webinar. But within here, you can click on the three little dots and it gives you different options to add in here. So if you have an application, so for me, like I like to use OneNote. I love OneNote. So I can put OneNote here as well. It brings up, I don't have it in here, so I can add it. And you can see here, it brings it up into my Teams application. So now I have OneNote embedded into my Teams. Granted, if you see my toolbar at the bottom here, I do have OneNote or had OneNote down there. So I could pin it down here, but maybe I just want to access everything from Teams itself. So you can kind of click in here and see what makes sense. They have Power BI if anyone's using Power BI, so you can bring that into your application as well and bring it in there and start kind of growing out this list. And for some reason, if you don't want any more, like I said, you can right click on it, unpin it, pin it, or hey, I want to just go ahead and uninstall Power BI because it was not useful for me. I didn't want to see it anymore. The next piece is you could organize Teams channels in your desired order. So I went into the organization of the application on the left-hand side so you can make sure it makes sense to you. Same functionality is within all the Teams groups you're in. The default method that these actually hit your Teams application is in the order they're actually granted to you from the Teams application. So when you're added to a new group, it'll come at the bottom. But maybe that new group you added is very important to you. So, hey, I just got added to the solution down here. Maybe I want to go ahead and drag this up to the top and drop it in here. And so maybe my Teams product management here, I don't want to see this at the top. I want to have it in the middle for some reason. Or in Ntiva's, I want to bring this one at the top. So you can really organize this to be in the order you want. So it makes, that makes most sense for actually your workflow for the day. The next one I use is the pin peoples and groups for chats. So if there's certain people that you work together a lot with, it might make sense to pin them within your people's list. So in the chat here, I can go ahead and pin people in here that I deal with the most. And if any Ntivians are watching out here and you don't see your name there, please don't take offense to it. I'll pin you there as my favorite for next time. But these are the people that I usually talk to on a daily basis. So I make sure that they're always here. And if I want to pin another person, I can go ahead and click on these three little dots, pin it in here. And now Chris is here at the top of my list or at the bottom of this list. So he's always in the forefront. And I can go ahead and scroll down through the rest of the list. So I do find that very handy. And if you need to unpin it, you can right click on it again or left click and unpin and back they go. The next one you can do is you can hide and unhide Teams channels. So as you get using Teams a lot and part of Teams groups, this channel list grows and grows and grows. So it might not make sense for you to see all the different channels in here. I do like this one at the top. Let me scroll back. So I have all these Teams channels created. You can see one here saying hidden channel. So you can left click on this little button here and you can hide as many or as little channels as possible. And as you hide them, they'll drop down. You can see here 2 hidden, 3 hidden. So if you don't want to have this list being too verbose, you can actually shrink it down to what makes sense to you. And you can click back on the hidden list. It'll tell you everything that's hidden. And maybe you want to bring it back. You can click show again and then bring it back out there so people can see it. So really, you can move around the actual groups and hide the channels that don't make sense to you and unhide them if you want. So again, make sure that it's working optimized for you. Now, this next piece here is something I use continuously, save messages for later. So I'll get a little bit more into the nuances of Teams communications within groups, what might make sense for organization here at the end, the importance of establishing, I don't say governance, but just a communication style within your department or company. But for me, I'm being pinged and messaged all over the place. I'm getting emails that need to have respond back to you. Now we're also getting Teams messages and group chats that you need to respond back to. But you're always busy from time to time going back and forth through things. You want to make sure that you don't miss anything. I love Outlook because with Outlook, I can flag the important messages that come through that requires my response to get back to. So I know, hey, at the end of the day, I need to go through all the flag listings that I've actually put on in Outlook to respond back to so I don't miss anything. That's the way it works best for me to make sure I'm corresponding with everyone appropriately in a timely manner. With Teams, I found it kind of a little bit cumbersome at first because I would get all these team messages and I would also sometimes get buried from someone that actually put me, send a message early on in the day. I might read it, it would go into an unread status and I might forget to reply back. And that's where I use the save message for later feature. So within Teams itself, back to the chat, say, I got find something here. Austin Smith. So basically this message right here, I want to save for later. I'll go ahead and click save this message. So now I save this message, it will actually be in a save listings here, which I'll show how to get to a little bit easier. So if I come in here and go to saved, it will pop up in my saved listing. So now I have all the saved messages that I can get back to. So if you're ever working really fast and you're kind of busy, but you see a team message come up that you need to respond to, but you might not be able to get to it that moment in time, hit the save feature on it. Then you'll be able to go back to it later in the day to see all the ones that you've marked saved and respond to them in a corresponding time to make sure you're not missing anything. I do find that trick really handy and take care of it and use it pretty much on a daily basis. Now we get into using Teams files. So for me, this is a big part of Teams. As I mentioned before, at the beginning of this webinar, I utilize almost all my files within a Teams group and session. I don't use share files anymore. There's some aspects of share files I still kind of get into now and then, but for the most part, I'm using files out of my Teams groups and within Teams channels. The benefit for me there is I can access those files wherever I go. I don't have to connect to a VPN to get access to it. So I'm working, constantly testing Azure Virtual Desktop. I'm working off a new Windows 11 device, going back and forth between the office, testing out MacBooks. But at the same time, while I'm doing all this testing, I want to still have access to all the same information I work on a daily basis, so it could be the most productive employee at that moment in time. And for me, it's having access easily to those files. And if I have all these files within Teams, I have the ability to get to them through the web, download them to my computer, or if I need to on the fly, I can actually get to it from my phone as well from the Teams application. If I wanted to, I could have potentially even worked from PowerPoint, developing this webinar from my phone through the Teams channel and then presented it to you all when I got back here to my house for the webinar so I can actually deliver this presentation. So it allows for a lot of flexibility there. The main piece for me, though, is being able to sync the files to the workstation. So by syncing the files to the workstation, I get the true application performance and all the tools I'm used to working within Word, Excel, PowerPoint, instead of working through the online applications. Now, the online applications are great, don't get me wrong, but maybe I'm old school and I really just like working off the applications, and that allows me to actually just use the files off my Explorer, open the Word document from there, save it, and actually you don't have to save it, automatically saves, close out of it, so next time I log in from a new location, it is there and ready for me. So with the share files to workstation, bring up Teams again. So within Teams itself, like I said, you have all your Teams groups, and when you sync files, you're going to be syncing files from the channels, not the actual group itself. So each channel has different options. So I'll click on the general here. You have your posts within here. Posts are a little bit like it's really just Yammer, where you have information that you guys are discussing about specific topics. So within this topic right here, I can discuss, hey, this talks about the sharing modern workplace. So if I'm going to reply back to it, I'm replying directly back to this sharing modern workplace. And if I start a new conversation, I'm creating a new topic to discuss. One of the benefits of actually using this posting features within a group is it allows people that come into the organization that might not have been there at the start, and they can look back through all the posts and kind of get an idea of how you got from point A to point B and take a look at some of the historical information there. So it is nice for people joining your group to really dive in and get an understanding of how the department became to be, as well as see different information that might have been passed around before. But back to files, if you click on the files location, this will give a listing of all the folders and files that are part of this channel. So what you can do here is you got a button called Sync. You can hit the Sync button, and this will interact with OneDrive. OneDrive is fantastic. It kind of got a bad rap, I feel, a handful of years ago with the group process. It broke constantly, it had limitations, and people kind of stopped really, I wouldn't say stop using it, but they just really had a bad experience or poor experience and went to other products, Box, Dropbox, and things along those lines. Over the last handful of years, I've had fantastic success with OneDrive, especially with the functionality of when they brought in files on demand. The files on demand allows me to sync this entire folder over to my computer, and it will only download the thumbnails of the file itself. So basically pointer records back to where the locations are. It doesn't download the entire folder or the entire file as well. It will download it. As I open it up, it will download the file from Teams, which is actually on the back end is SharePoint, and bring the file down to my computer on demand at that moment in time. The benefit of that is it will share a whole bunch of space on the computer. So on this, I've already synced this to my computer. I have open right here. So here is my File Explorer. So in the File Explorer, you have your PC, you'll see your drives here. If you're on a network, you probably have your network drives as well. Within SharePoint, it comes across as your Ntiva SharePoint structure, the organization name, and within Teams files and folders will bring down the actual channel you have synced to your computer. So you can see here, this is my synced channel of the product general folder. And I can see here it matches identical. I can even open this in SharePoint right here as well. And what this will do is bring up the SharePoint view. And you can see here, they all match together. So that's kind of how they all play together nicely. So really, it is just a SharePoint repository in the back end with Teams kind of constructing the actual front-end GUI to it. Now, the benefit I find, like I said, with having everything put to a downloadable point on your computer is I just interact with my folders here instead of having to go into Teams itself or working from the browser. So I'll come into these folders here and access the files I need, and it'll sync it up. So you can see here as a status of the check mark, that means it's synced up to the computer. Now I do have Teams hidden, test for demo. Let's show this, hit files, go ahead and sync this to my computer, and it will sync it down to my computer so it's available there. Now, what I'll do here is just kind of show you. I'm gonna go back to the beginning, right click, properties, let that run. So you can see here, I'm just going to the base level where all these folders and files are synced to my computer. It's going to be, about almost 50 gigabytes of space could have been taken up with all these files, and it's only taking up less than half a gigabyte on my computer. So this will also work on Macs and PCs as well. I have a Mac do the same thing. So it really makes sure that you're not running out of space on your devices. Now, I did just sync this folder right here to my computer so I can see it now. Test for demo. Bring this up, it has my files here, and it has a little cloud icon, meaning the file itself has not opened up on my computer yet. So it's just a pointer record back to it, double left click on it, it'll click the check, and it will open it up in the actual Word application I want to work on. I can open up this file from here. It will open up in the web browser edition of it as well. So you have the ability to work from both of them. You can edit the document. If you want, you can set the open in desktop app, which will do the same thing I just did by double left clicking on it out of my Explorer, or you can just edit this document from the application on the web. So it gives you a lot of functionalities to make sure to work with what makes sense for you. Again, for me, I did love working off the Windows Explorer and going down to actually open up the applications. Next piece, again, one of the benefits of working within Teams and SharePoint is the ability to do these couple of things I have listed here. The viewing the latest changes, as well as the ability to restore files. So with the latest changes, so here's the document I created. I can click this top button where it says saved and look at my version history. So again, basic document, so not really too bad for me to actually reconstruct that if needed, but imagine a big document, you're all working together on a big presentation or something that needs to go out the door to a client. You have multiple people in it. You can come into the version history and see what has happened and who modified it. You can actually get a picture of what it looks like as well at that moment in time. So you can see here, the document has, hope you're having a great Wednesday. Thank you for attending the session. That's what it is right now. And a handful of hours ago, I added that last piece. So I can see what changed occurred and who changed it. The great part about it is maybe I thought this was actually a better document. I said, this is the one I wanted. I didn't want those changes in here. I can actually click on this and download that document to bring down those changes that were, bring down the original one before the changes occurred. Maybe someone put something that shouldn't have been, or I like to present it a little differently. And that way I can restore as well. You still have that restore button here too. So it gives a nice little functionality where you can actually make these modifications, make these restores happen without having to call IT and having the power at your fingertips to do it yourself. The next thing here I just went through restore files, and is the shared files. So the best thing, you're typically not working on a file by yourself or not to be presented to anyone else. You're usually sharing this amongst teams, among groups. And those teams the people on the teams might not be part of the team's channel or team's group that you're part of. So you might want to share those with other people in your departments or other people across departments. So with that, you have the capability of doing that in multiple ways. And it's something that Microsoft has been making easier with teams over the years, is the ability to make it sharing a lot more simple than it was before. So you have multiple different places to share the file from. So within Teams itself, test for demo, I can click on this little button here and I can share it out from this place. I can hit copy link. It also has copy link from here. So I can click on the copy link. It'll give me some options of what you want it to do. You might not want the default options. You can click on here, say, hey, I want this document to be opened by anybody that's part of Ntiva, but I don't want them to be able to edit it. I love the document the way it is. It's supposed to be a read-only document. Click apply, copy this link, and now I have a link I can send to people either through Teams or maybe through email. And they'll be able to access that document, but they won't be able to edit it. And you can make sure that it makes sense for you as well, on like the options you have available to it. So you'd have multiple different ways to actually share these documents out of it. You can do it from the online edition as well, same thing. And you do have the options from the full-blown application as well. Next piece in here I have is something that might work for you all. I don't think it's something you use on a day-to-day basis, but it is kind of an interesting thing you can do with files. So you can turn files into a tab. Now, what I mean by that is I can come into my Teams channel, go for my test for demo, and then I have this Excel document right here. I can click on these 3 buttons and make this a tab. So remember, at the top, we have the tabs, we have the posts, which is like the Yammer, the files, you have a wiki, and you can make this a tab as well. So, there it goes, tab right there. So I'm going to click on this and kind of show you a demonstration of kind of what you might want to use this for, what you can use it for. So I just came up with an idea of saying, hey, in my department for products, let's go ahead and have a tab for fresh ideas. Let's make sure to see if, hey, any ideas you want to put into the, to make our department better, or hey, we want to do some lunch ideas. We also have fresh ideas. Let's do some lunch on Fridays. So again, people can kind of put their information here directly from the tab itself. So it relates back to this file, but this file folder here might get very messy and big, just like this general folder I have. So it has a whole bunch of different items in here. So that file might be hard to find, but if you put it into the actual tab itself, it becomes its own almost document at the top where people don't have to go searching around for it. Again, you can maybe have different things in here, maybe timesheets you want to put in here when who's responsible for what, so people have an idea when they click on it, they know who has access to this, to what files and what they need to do for the day. Again, it's kind of what makes sense for you, but you have the ability to actually put files up here as a different tab. The next one here is use Teams for searching for files. So one thing, if you have a whole bunch of different Teams groups you're part of, and you're part of different channels, and you're actually chatting to a bunch of people all the time, you have files that kind of go all over the place. So the search feature within Teams itself, I find very powerful. So it's right at the top. You can search for pretty much anything. So you can put in here like, let's see, Azure Virtual Desktop. Pop it in here, it'll bring up messages. I've talked to people within Azure Virtual Desktop. You can see here the messages that I've sent. And then you come here to people that I've talked to with it, and then files that contain, have the verbiage Azure Virtual Desktop in it. And you can see here, it's not just the name of the file it's looking for, it's crawling the actual indexing the content of the file itself. So you can peruse that to make sure that if it's a file that you're working on, you're lost, you know where to look for it. So I find this very quick and efficient way to find files. The next piece here is managing notifications. So if any of you like me, I get distracted very quickly, very easily. I hear a ding, I need to find out who sent me a message, what's necessary. So I want to make sure that when I am working, that I want to make sure that I'm getting alerted to messages that are really important and to kind of set the thresholds for when I should start looking at something based on the notification levels within Teams. So with Teams, you have the ability to customize different ways it actually goes into your feeds as well as your notifications per channel. So I'll bring up Teams again. So with getting into customizations of settings within Teams, they do have multiple ways to get there. So within Teams application itself, you have the 3 dots here at the top. You can click on this and click on settings, which will bring up the settings right here. You also have the capability in your task tray here. You can right click on it, go to settings as well. We'll bring up the same view we just had before. Now within here, you have your notification settings that will give you all the different options available to you to change to make sure it makes sense for how you want to be alerted for different types of messages and how you want to be alerted for different types of messages. So in here, you have a handful of different options. Do you want to play a sound for incoming notifications? Maybe you don't like hearing that ding. I do. I like to kind of know when things come through. But the key piece of this is make sure that I have the sounds and the notifications set for what I want to hear. So within chats, I can click on edit. And within chats, when it comes through, I want to make sure that I want to have a banner alert for any messages and then a banner feed in the activities. So any activities, anything I get mentions get put into there because of that setting that is set within the notifications. The other piece within here for the notification is you have different call settings, how you want to be alerted to that. And within here, you have notification style. How do I want the notifications to come through? Do I want it to be within the windows or have it be into the Teams built in? So you can play around with these different settings here to see what makes sense for you. So in here, I do have a custom setting of how I like to be alerted, but that custom setting might not be best for all channels that I'm working on. So with this, you can customize the notification per channel. So I can come in back to my Teams. I mentioned last time I'm working heavily on the Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop, used to be called Windows Virtual Desktop. If you click onto the 3 little buttons here, you have channel notifications. So right here, I have off. I wasn't receiving any notifications on this except for direct replies to personal mentions. But I really want to make sure that if anyone posts anything about Azure Virtual Desktop, I want to see it. I want to be alerted on it. I want to be alerted on all replies and mentions. So instead of it going to what the custom level was that I created within the settings of the team application itself, I can customize the notification directly to the specific channel. So I want to be alerted on all activities. Now, if anyone was about to come in here and do a post within this, I would get alert from the Windows system here saying, hey, there's a new post, you should take a look at it. So again, that's important to me to find out. So definitely recommend playing around with those notification channels to see what makes sense for you. Now, this next one, as I'm going through this, is the key part of it. Even though I like to be notified of certain things going on, I also need to know when I don't want to be disturbed. For instance, when I'm creating this webinar, I didn't want to be disturbed by the ding and kind of going off on a tangent, looking around for things. Please use the availability status and set as do not disturb when it makes sense for you when you don't want to get those alerts. So within Teams, you do have your availability here at the top right. So you have your name or your initials, you can click on it and it'll give you current status right here underneath my name. You can see here it says do not disturb. It was not do not disturb at the beginning of this. It will correlate back to your calendar. So at this moment in time on my calendar, it shows I have the webinar. So would it have me marked as busy? I came in here and said, do not disturb because I didn't want to be alerted or a person messaged me, hey, how do you do something XYZ during this presentation? So definitely recommend taking use of this do not disturb if you find yourself kind of getting, the whole squirrel thing where you kind of get going down certain tangents. I do find this handy, especially when I'm making sure to get things done in a timely fashion, and I'll set that to do not disturb. The next piece here is marked as urgent. So within this, go back to the do not disturb. If you actually read this, it says, I will not be disturbed unless the messages are marked as urgent. So with urgent messages, you have the capability of making sure that person has to respond to you within a certain amount of time and they'll be continuously getting dinged. The neat part about this is you have the way to actually customize it for the entire company itself if you want to allow that type of activity to occur. Now, if you see within network, within Ntiva, here, I don't have this feature for, come back in here, what should show right here is an exclamation point of when I send a message of actually being something I want to have an urgent message delivered. So I have another demo site. So So this is a different Teams group that I have created. I'll do some more demos from this in the future. So for here, you can see I'm doing a chat message. This is a Teams application, the web application of Teams. So you do have the ability to not have to install Teams itself to be able to get into it. So and then here you can actually see now I have this exclamation point. So I can do, hey, need response now, and put a little exclamation point on this, and it'll tell me, hey, how do you want to send this? Do you want to send this to standard, important, or hey, I want it urgent. I want this recipient to be notified every 2 minutes for 20 minutes and pop that out there. And so this can dismiss, send it over. So now this has been sent to my other demo account saying, hey, I need an urgent message, and every 2 minutes it is actually hitting them with a notification that they need to respond to it. And so within Teams itself, kind of going back to this, you do have in the admin section functions of turning features on and off. Let's see here, show all Teams. So if you want to kind of modify what's available to people in your organization, you definitely can work with Ntiva to come in here and modify the certain settings. So in here, this is the overall administration of Teams itself. I can go into message policies. I only have one global overall policy for this test group I have. I could have multiple global policies, or say multiple policies. Maybe I want to have the VPs or owners have a different policy from everyone else. And so within here, you have different availability, different on-off switches. I don't want to have the ability for anybody to delete messages. I don't want anyone to delete chats. I don't want to have memes in conversations. So maybe that's not a conversation style that you want to have as part of your business. So you can turn these things off so they're not available for people to use. And you can see here, I have sent urgent message. So this is something that we have turned off in Ntiva because we have different communication channels we want people to use when it's urgent, not through messaging over Teams. So we have it turned off. So if you want, you can make sure to have that turned off if that needs to be set for your communication style for your organization. The next part here is had mark on red. So I did say have a little demonstration of how I save messages. Another way to actually do this is if you want to make sure you kind of go back to read things, is make things unread. So as people message you and you read it, say, hey, I need to get back to that person. So I can come back into this message here. I saved this. I did save. I can go ahead and click on this and then mark as on red. And then you can see here, it bolded it here because that's kind of how I do go back on a daily basis as well as seeing if I need to get back to anybody is any unread messages. So it does allow it to kind of be brought to the forefront that you need to respond to that person, even though you have acknowledgedly read that message before. The next one you have here is notify when a user is available. So if you're trying to get in touch with somebody, maybe you're trying to get in touch with me and you want me to be available, be alerted once I get done with this webinar, somebody can click on my name here and notify when available. So the next time Chris Hornbeck comes out from being busy and is available, I'll get a notice in from my Windows notification here that Chris is available for me to reach out to correspond with them however I needed to at that moment in time. So those are some key notification tricks that I use. Again, it's kind of what makes sense to you, but there's a lot of options to make sure to customize it for your use case and to kind of try in and out of the day to see what makes sense. The next piece here I have is security in Teams. So I really recommend taking a look at Office 365 Defender, which is an optional add-on licensing structure within Office 365 to enable a higher security within Teams itself, as well as within other applications within Microsoft 365 suite. Office 365 Defender will go into being a anti-spam solution. It will make sure that you have link protection protection. You have the phishing protection. It also will do safe sends and safe link attachments and attachment protection. So it does a whole bunch of different activities within the 365 world itself. But within Teams, it will also make sure that there's any malicious content being shared back and forth can be blocked, as well as this thing I have here is saying safe links. So if people put links into chats and into folders or files or sharing with you, it will defang them or take a look to make sure that there's nothing malicious on the other end of that link that's being shared. So with Teams, you do have the capability of connecting in with other people that are not part of your organization. So there's some vendors that we have, that we can kind of connect back into our team system so they can message me back and forth. I can message them. So you want to make sure that you have the most robust security features available to you when using solutions like Teams itself. And the Office 365 Defender is a great way to enhance your security platform. And I do believe maybe sometime next quarter, I'll be doing a webinar just on Office 365 Defender, so I can kind of go through all the nuances and the robustness of the solutions they've put together throughout the years, because they've definitely enhanced that product. The next piece I have here is called private channels. So it's not anything that private channels are a way to lock down a folder within a Teams group, so only the people that need to see it can see that file. So it's not anything to help protect or anything from malicious activity, but it's a way to secure a file or folders within a Teams group to only the people that need to see it. So kind of back to the share folder ways. So there could have been a example, bring up my Teams. So back in the share folder days, you might have had a S drive or a P drive or something along those lines. And within that drive, they might have had maybe important employee information that you didn't want people to see. So people still had access to the S drive, but then on the personnel folder, you had it limited to maybe the HR people only need to see that. Similar type of thing with the Teams channel. You can see here, you see these locks. These are private channels that are only available to the people that I have assigned those to that channel itself. So within this channel, I can see who's selected and who can have access to it. Because right now, this one, I only have access to it. So nobody else as part of this group can even see that this folder exists. It's kind of makes it a little bit nice that way. So there's no even, they can't even see that it's there with a lock. They can't click on it. They just don't even see that it's even there. So this way, if you maybe have a group where you want to make sure you have HR files, personnel files, or anything you want to get a little more security so the whole group doesn't see it, you can create those private channels to make sure that you accommodate that type of level of security. The next piece here is people kind of always talk about, hey, I'm doing a lot more within Teams itself. You know, I have files going back and forth. I'm calling people. I'm sharing files through my conference calls. You know, how secure is it? So Microsoft does have a lot of security baked into the Teams application itself. So the Teams does kind of have everything encrypted in rest and in transit. And it's basically set at the industry standards right now, the TLS, as well as the SRTP, to make sure that all your information is secured as much as possible. They are also putting together end-to-end encryption for one-to-one calls that's available today. A person would have to have it enabled at their, the sender and receiver would have to have that enabled. And that will basically encrypt it at the source and decrypt it at the destination and make sure nothing can be caught in between. And they are looking to actually put this into development for group chats as well as group conference calls as well, to make sure that everything is encrypted in that fashion. But just because it's not available doesn't mean it is not secure. Like I said, they have everything encrypted at rest and in transit for all the solutions and sharings within Teams itself. The next piece here, we have some other tips and tricks. So I know I have keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts are great for some people. And not great for others. I'm just going to really touch on where to find that. The one thing I like about Teams itself is it allows you to see the keyboard shortcuts pretty quickly. You click on the settings or this little button up here, keyboard shortcuts. You can click on this and kind of peruse this to see if there's anything that catches your eye that you might want to use. You can do, Control N for a new chat. The other one I kind of like in here is the navigation. So you can see here you have different navigations. So what makes sense? So open clip training. So I showed you the applications we have on the left-hand side. I have clip training listed right there. So I can take a look at the keyboard shortcuts. And now I know, hey, if I ever want to get to clip training quickly, I can hit Control 5. So within Control 5, click that, it opens up my clip training. And this is the training as a service that we have with Ntiva offerings. So I click in this real quickly and get access to my course library. So maybe I want to take a course training on Microsoft apps, or come in here and find Power BI because I want to get more training on Power BI because I just added that to my list. So I do find that kind of handy. The other one I find more handy though is this slash button. So the slash in the search field, it will bring up certain functions. So up here, we'll put in the slash and it'll bring down a list of different information I can find out. So with this, I can go back to what I have here, saved. It'll bring up that save list I had before. So I use this one a lot because again, I save the messages and I come back here. I want to see everything I saved. You just do the / save and pops up here. The other one that's kind of neat as well, you can click on the / and you can see, I think there's one called organization. Let me see where this person falls within the organization. I want to see where Lauren Green falls in the organization. And I'll bring up who they report to and how they go through it. So I recommend if you want, just put a little / in here, take a look through the different options to see what you might want to use. Maybe it's some feature you never even knew of. So I do find this really handy. The next one I have here is use team conference dialing in with NCE SKUs. So if anyone's moving to Microsoft New Commerce Experience, this is something that everyone's going to have to do this year if they haven't already done it, because that's where Microsoft is making sure all legacy licenses for Office E3, off business standard, anything you're using that's Office 365 license needs to go to the New Commerce Experience. One of the benefits they have there is you get Teams conferencing free for all SKUs that contain Teams, which is mainly the big 6 you have there: your business basic, your business standard, your business premium, 365, E3, E5, and the Microsoft E5 and E3. They all contain Teams. Previously, this was a $4 add-in, but right now you have the ability to add it for any of those clients using that SKU for free. So definitely recommend taking advantage of that. And what that does is it brings in a Teams call. Where is my Teams? Go to my calendar here. So that will do is meeting. Back on this. Where is it? Close. Have my Outlook up. There you go. Bring up my Outlook. Create a new appointment. And as I do a Teams meeting, it'll bring in a conference call for people to add in here. So maybe they're not able to join from a computer at that moment in time, they're driving around. So bring them in a calling feature here so they can call into this actual conference so they get access to it. And this number will stay the same. You can actually modify the PIN if you needed to. So this way, every meeting I call or have people wanting to join, it will have a call-in option available. Again, this used to be a $4 cost to clients. Right now, it's free for anyone moving to NCE. So definitely recommend taking advantage of that piece. And lastly, establish communications guidelines for your company or department. So with Microsoft Teams kind of being a really kind of a focused hub of communications coming up within the Microsoft suite, as well as how people coordinate, have conversations within email, establishing the guidelines that make sense for your department is very handy and probably beneficial to your employees to know when to communicate to certain individuals and how. So you might want to say, hey, for emails, I want to have a 24-hour response rate on emails, but for messages, I need to have a 30-minute or an hour time frame or along those lines. So people aren't trying to kind of guess which way they need to communicate with back and forth with people. Or maybe, hey, Teams is a great way within chat just to kind of check in with employees, talk about issues that are happening. But if action needs to take place on them, it needs to be an email corresponds for that action to take place. So that way you're not trying to figure out two different areas of looking for how do I maintain what I need to know to do next, because, hey, I know everything coming through for action needs to happen from Outlook, but hey, I can kind of work on issues within the Microsoft Teams. So I definitely recommend discussing communication styles with your employees or the departments to see what makes sense and establishing guidelines that you can kind of define for that department itself. So you guys are communicating correctly and there's no guesswork what the employees need to have for how they need to respond and the time that they need to respond. So definitely recommend discussing that with your team. And I think that will bring us to the end of this webinar I have for Teams tips and tricks. I hope you found this valuable. Again, these are tips and tricks that work for me. And I definitely see an uptick and the usage of Teams and people asking about it. So I do think if you're not using it that much today, this is something that you're going to step into pretty quickly over the next couple of years, as everything's kind of be funneled into this direction. So I'll take a look to see if we have any Q&A. I have a question, but I'm unfortunately not quite following to ask. Bill, if you want, I'll reach out to you separately and see what you're talking about there, and make sure I answer your question correctly. If anyone has any other questions, definitely please share them in the Q&A. I'll definitely get to them here. So Bill was asking, are they static files or can they interact with other sync files? So as the, if you have, what if you're getting if they have actually linkages to other files itself and they're changing? Yes, they do sync, they do interact with each other. They're basically everything on the back end can be talking, which is the SharePoint functionality, the repository where the files live. And just because they're static linkages on your computer doesn't mean they're not interacting on the back end. So the answer is they can interact with other sync files. And Bill, I can get together with you as well as if there's a use case in particular you're talking about, because I'm very curious as well. All right, well, I think that might be it. So I definitely appreciate you all attending this webinar. It's always a pleasure speaking with everyone here. I've definitely seen the similar names back and forth, so I appreciate you going along this journey with me. And I look forward to talking to you all next month. Next month, we're going to be bringing in a special guest, Mark Wasner, who is the Director of Unified Communications here at Ntiva, to talk about business voice options and go into the what you can do within Microsoft Business Voice. So look forward to having that presentation with you next month. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.